We'll do a review on the Likutei Sichos in Chelek Chof Ches, volume 28. This is the Sicha for Rosh Chodesh Sivan. The Rebbe is Mechadish, comes up with a novel idea that what is meant by the Gemara that on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, when they came to Mount Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't tell them anything because they were tired from the travel, that it actually means also that they were exhausted from their spiritual travel, as the transformation from the travels till then, till Refidim, and now coming to the Har Sinai, in which the Jews, the Bnei Yisrael, reached a level of Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, like one heart, one mind. That took a toll, an exhaustion, an emotional exhaustion. But furthermore, the Rebbe argues that actually this tiredness of the road is not a negative, but it's actually a positive. That means that because they were all at the level of subjugation, their own entity was subjugated. This was a level which all Yidden, Moshe Rabbeinu and the simplest Jew are together. Over there, there's nothing to be said. Over there needs to be just quiet. It is all together. And then starts the second stage of the preparation. As we'll see, the Rebbe explains this. We'll go now step by step. Rosh Chodesh Simon Aleph. So the pasuk says that Chodesh Hashlishi, portion in Yisrael, the pasuk says on the third month, which is the third month from Nisan, which is Sivan, Bayoim Hazeh, on this day, which is Rosh Chodesh, Bo Midbar Sinai. They came to the desert of Sinai. And the pasuk continues, Vayichan Shom Yisrael Neged Hahor. And Yisrael camped there, Vayichan, in a singular Loshen, not Vayachanu, but Vayichan. And this was Neged Hahor. They came and they camped in front of the mountain. Zogun Chazal, so our sages tell us, Pasuk doesn't say clearly Rosh Chodesh, it says Bayom Hazeh. So the Chazal say, made them talk from the Rosh Chodesh, that it is referring the day of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of Sivan. As in them talk from Rosh Chodesh Sivan, that on the day of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which is the Chodesh Hashlishi on the third month, so on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which is the third month, seinen Eden angekommen zu Har Sinai, the Jews arrived to Mount Sinai. So now, having reached that goal, it's not just coming to the destination, but this actually is a tremendous level, being in front of Har Sinai. As we say in the Haggadah, Ilu kervonu lifnei Har Sinai, v'leinosan lonu es ha'Torah dayenu. If it would have been just to Har Sinai, so that in itself is a tremendous level. Dos allein was the Eden seinen zugekommen zu Har Sinai. The fact that they came to Mount Sinai, noch eder mehr sie dort gegeben the Torah, before they were given the Torah, is showing a maila nifloa beyoser, is already a very wondrous level. In der Haggadah, as we say in the Haggadah, Ilu kirvonu lifnei Har Sinai, v'leinosan lonu es ha'Torah dayenu. The Haggadah we say, had he brought us close before Mount Sinai, and he had not given us the Torah, that would have been sufficient. So why? What's the big deal of being in Har Sinai? Because while der etzem gefinnen sich neged Har, the fact itself that you are next to the mountain, hat by the Eden aufgetan an Ilui Niflo, this accomplished by the Yidden at tremendous elevation. The Chazal zogen auf dem Pasuk, as our sages say in the verse, we see that the Jews were elevated because it says Vayicham Shom Yisrael. They camped there in a singular language used here because it means Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, as one man with one heart, and that is something which was accomplished right in that day. Al yidei zeh was Eden given neged through this that the Yidden camped opposite the mountains, and is a geworden be'achdus gemura. This made them in total unity, ki ish echad b'leiv echad, as one man with one heart. So that's already a tremendous accomplishment under Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So the Rebbe says, "Gefitman advar pelle lechoyre b'negei Rosh Chodesh Sivan." We find something surprising, a matter that is surprising with regards to Rosh Chodesh Sivan. The Gemara says that during the following days, starting with the second day, they were preparing themselves for Matan Torah. But on the first day, because they were tired from the road, Moshe Rabbeinu told them nothing, no preparation. And the question is, what does the tiredness have so much that they were anticipating, they wanted to come, they were counting the days? How could it be they're not told anything? Why didn't the Yidden demand that we want something over here? Does just physical tiredness sufficient to be that not to say anything? Look, let's look inside. The Gemara Rechen Tois Beprotius. The Gemara enumerates in detail how Moshe prepared the Yidden to receive the Torah. The Meshach die Tag von seiner Ankommen zu Har Sinai, the duration of the days from when they came to Mount Sinai, bis zum Tag von Matan Torah, until the day that the Torah was given. And it says specifically what he told them. Beis Sivan, on the second day of Sivan, Amar Lahu, he told them, what the Pasuk says, Va'atem tiyu li mamleches kohanim. You shall be to me a nation of priests. That's what was told to them on the second of Sivan. Gimel Sivan, on the third of Sivan. The Gemara continues, he told them the mitzvah's Hagbola. He told them the mitzvah of limitation not to get close to the mountain. And Dalit Sivan, on the fourth of Sivan, their tzivui of Perisha, he told them the command of separation between the men and their wives. On the fifth of Sivan, Hey Sivan, is given Bona Mizbeach v'hikrival of Korban. He built a Mizbeach and he brought a sacrifice. And Ba'adla Midas Nasav and Ishmael, they called Yisrael, until they all said Nasav and Ishmael. This was all on the fifth of Sivan. As opposed, but what happens on Rosh Chodesh? He didn't tell them anything. Mashain came. Rosh Chodesh Sivan, dem Tog ze seinen angekommen zu Har Sinai, on the day that they had arrived by Mount Sinai. Zog the Gemara says, Lo Amar Lehu v'lo Midim mishum chulsha de Ursa. He didn't tell them anything because they were tired of the road. Hayois the Eden seine gewen bachalishus machmas dem teirach aderach. Since the Yidden were weak because of the difficulties, the troubles of the road, of the travels, hat Moshe abgewart mit die Hachones zu Kabbalas HaTorah. So Moshe waited with the preparations to receiving the Torah bis dem Yom Shel Achaz, until the next day that follows, Beis Sivan, the second day of Sivan. But the Rebbe says this is something very difficult to understand in Plug. But it would seem is das bechlal nit verstandig. This is totally not understood. Says Yadu of us Chazal Zogen. It's known what our sages of blessed memory say. As from Mitzrayim, as they left Egypt, is by Eden given a gevaldiket shuka to Kabbalas HaTorah. By the Eden, there was a tremendous yearning for receiving the Torah. Bis as they gezählt die verbliebene Tag bis Matan Torah, to the extent they were yearning for them that they were counting how many days were left over until they get the Torah. So if they were counting the whole time, so it's self-understood simply understood, Ados as was enters is geworden der Tag von Kabbalah Torah, that the closer they came to the day of receiving the Torah, als größer is was geworden, or die Steikikus, the greater became their yearning for Matan Torah. Al achas kama v'kama, kommen dich zum Har Sinai. It kept on increasing their yearning, and when they finally came to Har Sinai, dem Ort, wo es wird gegeben werden, the Torah, the place where the Torah will be given, hat das Avada und Avada herausgerufen bei Eden. So for sure and for sure, this has brought out by the Eden the starkste Gefühlen, the strongest feelings, von Tshuka, from yearnings und Tzipia and anticipation to Kabbalah Torah, to receiving the Torah. They were there, they're at the mountain already. So it must have been the yearning and the anticipation that started from the time they left Egypt, and now it's already almost there. They're about the mountain. We see in the nature of people as that when a person has a strong yearning to a matter, is by indamut nitefes mokim die Vermattetkeit von sein Guf. So then he doesn't care about how tired his body is. Ados soll ihm abhalten, this should prevent him in sein Bemühungen, in his efforts zu kriegen die Sache, to reach the item. This physical tiredness doesn't stop a person, his yearning, he wants to get something. Befrat, wenn der Halt schon non zu bekommen, especially when you're already so close to receiving. Das zu was is mistaken, that which he's yearning for. Fühlt sicher nicht dann die Vermattetkeit von Guf. For sure he doesn't feel them, the tiredness of the body. Is tamua. So the surprising, therefore, azayin dig neged hor, while they are opposite the mountain. Noch die alle Wochen und Tag from Gaguim zu Kabbalah Torah, after the weeks and days of yearning for receiving the Torah, soll sich Moshe Rabbeinu abhalten. So Moshe Rabbeinu should hold back from zu machen sein die Eden, to prepare the Eden to Kabbalah Torah, to receiving the Torah, to Libchulsha the Urcha, because they're weak of the road, so he's holding back and not telling them about the Matan Torah after yearning and looking forward and here. You shouldn't prepare them for Matan Torah, give something on that day. And not only did he not prepare, he told them nothing. Well, Nochmer, v'chazal zayne medaik, as Chazal, sages of blessed memory, they emphasize, le'omerlu v'le'midi, nothing, didn't tell them nothing. And what they can ein Wort nit gesagt, he didn't even tell them one word. In them alle machone zu Kabbalah's Torah, in anything that has to do, how could Moshe Rabbeinu not say anything? But it wasn't only Moshe Rabbeinu. The Yidden themselves weren't demanding. The Yidden, euch mitzad Yidden, wie kommt es also? The question is, from the perspective, from the situation of the Yidden, wie kommt es, how come, as they are asking given, why did they agree abzuruhen sich, to rest up, und nicht gemont by Moshe? Why didn't they demand by Moshe, as there's a losen herren epis was, they should at least tell them something. Minimally tell you something. When Kabbalah Torah about receiving the Torah, the Gemara says Leimidi told them nothing. How would they accept that? And the Rebbe says, especially when you think about it, even the tiredness of the way wasn't really that difficult. We know the Eibishter sent the clouds in front of them, made the road smooth. It wasn't such a tiring. It wasn't so far from Refidim, the place they came for. Befrat Ado is nit given kein größer Tirchadurcha. It wasn't such a great tiredness of the road. Was all goyim sein a größer chalishus that would cause a big, strong weakness. Borum alle from Refidim bis Har Sinai is nit kein größer merchel. Number one, from Refidim to Har Sinai is not a large, big distance. Base, the etzem gain is nit given verbunden mit kein Tirche Yisera. The actual walking did not involve too much trouble. Warum der Ananakov is doch gegangen for us, because the cloud of glory went ahead of them. Und kol hanamuch mag be anything that was low Any valley he raised it. Anything high, he lowered. They made it a flat way to walk for them. They were going on a flat road. So not a long distance, not a difficult walk because the roads were flat, straightened out. The hills and the valleys, they're all straightened out. It's a flat land. And number three, Gimel, Rosh Chodesh Sivan is given b'yom Rishon. It was on a Sunday. Oder b'yom Beis. Oder on a Monday, depending on the two opinions as the Gemara brings down, whether the Torah was given on the seventh day or it was given on the sixth day. But still, Sunday is right after Shabbos. Yom Beis is Monday, 2 days after Shabbos. This was very close to complete resting on Shabbos, so they weren't so tired. Is the Chnochmer Tomua, so it's even more surprising. Favos is by Eden given as Agros Chalishus. Why were the Yidden so tired? As Sulib them, so they need Zaim Mesugul to Kenan Herna Filein Borda. Because of this, they won't be capable to even hear one word. He told them nothing about receiving the Torah. So the Rebbe wants to understand. The Gemara says he's preparing them all the other days. On Rosh Chodesh, the day they came for Mount Sinai, he didn't tell them anything. How could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu will hold back if they wanted the whole time? The Yidden were allowed, and Moshe didn't say anything. It wasn't such a difficult walk. It wasn't so far. It was after Shabbos. So why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say anything? This must mean that it involves something else, not the physical tiredness, but it had to do with an emotional, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. Ois base. Yeshlemer debir in them, so we can say the explanation in this that mitchulsha de urcha, when it says the weakness of the road of the travel, meinen chazal, our sages mean nit azoy de chalish haguf, not so much the bodily weakness from their gashmis diker alich b'derech, from the physical travel on the road, nor beikir, but mainly the chalishus ruchnis, the spiritual weakness. Mitzad the ruchnis diker halicha b'derech, because of the spiritual journey that they went on the road, was the Eden haben damals durchgemacht that the Jews went through at that time. Punkt is farana halicha gashmis b'derech nemokum gashmi. Just as there is a physical journey, you go from on the road from place to place, physically, from one physical place to the other physical place. Azoyis faram, the inyan from halicha ruchnis b'derech haruchnis. There is also a spiritual journey in the spiritual road. That Adam gate from ein matzev moken beruchnis. The person travels from one situation, one place spiritually, to a zweiten matzev, to a second situation, moken place beruchnis. You're traveling from one space, spiritual level, to another spiritual level. Either you're going up, or you're going down. Or it's another inyan, or a change to another aspect. Und das can sein, this journey can be either b'midos, either an emotional journey. That's in the heart, believe, aviv, yirachulu, the love, the fear. You can travel from place to place, condition. Or it can be b'seichel, intellectually, shebemoyach, which is in the brain, habanosi b'seichel, how he understands it, traveling from place to place. Oder, or there may be different ways and steps in one's service to Hashem. Das alles is halicha b'derech beruchnis. This is all considered a going on the road on a spiritual level. Ubin yonenu, and as it's in our case, the journey of the Yid. The masois was Eden seinen gegangen from Mitzrayim bis Har Sinai. The travels that the Jews were going on from Egypt until Mount Sinai. They weren't just a physical journey, but also and mainly a spiritual journey. Ashinui in their matzav aruchni, this was a spiritual change of the condition, the spiritual condition from Eden of the Jewish people, unan aliyah b'avedis Hashem, an elevation in the service of Hashem. Und werden als mer nenter umeroi, so that they become all closer and more fitting to Kabbalah Torah, to receiving the Torah. Steht in Svarim, as it's brought down in the Svarim. As einige Mitzrayim seinen Eden gewähnt Shikuyim in Memtes Sharitum. While they were in Egypt, they were sunk in 49 gates of impurity. Und jeder Tag ist gewähnt Asvire Valiyah for the Shorim. And every day till Matan Torah, they were going up one gate of the 49 descents, one day at a time going up. These noch memtes aliyos, until after the 49 elevations, they became totally elevated. So so that they became a nation of priests and a holy people when it came to Matan Torah. All these travels, aliyos and avedus Hashem, the elevations in the service of Hashem, seine given in an oifen mesuder, they were in an orderly way. All of them were basically in a step-by-step way, one day after the other. An aliyah medarga ledarga, an elevation from one step to the other one. Ober the aliyah by them massive for refidim to Har Sinai, but here there was all of a sudden a tremendous jump. The spiritual standing from refidim to that was a big jump. By them massive for refidim to Har Sinai is given by Oifun Shel Shinikru. Here became a change, an essential, a main change. Spiritually, they journeyed a tremendous distance. And they became elevated, uncomparable to the alichas v'aliyas from the tekfardim, to the journeys and the elevations of the days prior here. Is move on, so it's understood. That is associated, it's tied with the great trouble and effort in the service of Hashem, because all of a sudden they have a tremendous change and a tremendous highest level. What is this highest level? We see the highest level to achieve a unity of all people together to camp b'leiv echad. That means that they are such a revelation of such a part of every Yid, which makes all Yidden together, which is a tremendous high level. Gimel. The Ausgeteiltkeit von dem Masse, the distinction of this journey, that was presented by our sages in the above mentioned statement. On the verse, the Yisrael camped over there. Over here they were like one man and one heart. But all other encampments was with arguments and complaints and fights. By Sharkol HaChanoyis, by the other campings, and there was always grudges and there was always argument. Und Davke, by their Chaniya Neged Ahor, but specifically when they came to camp before the mountains, opposite the mountain, seine die Yidden gestanden in Achdus Gemurah, the Yidden were standing in a total unity. Kish Echad B'Leiv Echad, like one man. Now, normally you would translate all the other ones derogatorily, that were always fighting, and now they're Kish Echad B'Leiv Echad. But the Rebbe explains now the reason why they were arguments before. That was natural. That's the way it should be. People understand things differently, so they don't all come together in one mind. It is the exception is that all of a sudden they're all agreeing to something. V'yeshleimar, the pirush from shar kol hachanoyis b'tarumas b'machloikis. What is the meaning that all the other campments were with grudges and discontent, machloikis, is not chas v'sholem and poshut and zin. This doesn't, God forbid, mean the very simple sense that they were just fighting each other. As by Allah Chanois, by they give them achloikis in Yonam Gashmim, that all other captains there was disagreement, there was discord in physical matters. Ukiyotzubai and similar. No. But nor siza machloikis l'shem shamayim. The disagreement was for the sake of Hashem. But mitzad hateva shitbiya kodesh baruch hu b'bnei Adam. For the nature that Hashem has endowed and coined in every person is ein the same shaman. We know that the minds are not. We don't think the same way. Unochmer, and even more than that, this is not just by people in Torah Atzma zayin faran deis chalukus. Within Torah, there are different of opinion. Unochmer. The Torah was not given cut exact, but each matter you can have 49 faces to say that it's clean, and 49 faces tummy, which means the Torah allows for various different interpretation within the Torah itself, which means that's not bad. That's the way the Eibishter made it. The Eibishter made people with other minds, with different minds. That Eibishter made different Torah that should be different ways of seeing it. And both these and these are the words of the living God. They're all Hashem's Torah. Is Alpis a move on, so it's understood according to this as mitzad hateva di kedusha v'seder ha'inyonim beruchnis, that because of nature of kedusha and the order of the matters on a spiritual, the other encampments war with discord, but that was for the sake of heaven, because that was in the way Torah is given and the way people are, and that's not meaning that they were fighting over physical matters. They were just understanding or having different opinion about spiritual matters. But as they were staying opposite the mountain. So there was something very new, a novelty was accomplished, which goes against with the Teva. As seinen bei sei bottle geworden, alle chiluke deis, that all differences of opinions became negated. Und sie seinen is achet geworden, ki ish echad, they were all united like one man. And furthermore, with one heart, was with like one man and with one heart. This is something which is unique, that all of the difference of opinion were gone, and there was a major novelty that against the nature, and all of a sudden everybody is together with one man. That's the Chiddush. Nit nor ki ish echad. It's not just like one person. Mitan achdus vasein nebosur zein ze ala ki ish echad. Ish echad means that you can see like one man, everybody's agreeing, everybody's doing. In the visible extension of things, they're all the same, but everybody's doing the same thing. That means ish echad. That is benegei la'asiyah. Then as it relates to doing, they're all doing the same thing. As alle Eden seine Maskim, they're all agreeing, machlit, and they decide bachlota achas benegei la'asiyah in one decision as it pertains to doing v'chulu b'poyel. Actually, they're doing the same thing. So what we're saying, not only kish echad, we're also saying belev echad. Also in their heart emotionally, nor euch belev echad. An achdus gemurah euch der leiv regesh odom. A total unity, also the heart, the feeling of the person, they were all together. So this was a tremendous level that they gained to move on as azah groise tircha. So it's understood that such a great effort, a trouble of changing, cutting to this position, hishtadlus v'yigia ruchnis, to the Grechon or the Achdus, the effort and the spiritual exertion to reach that unity. This is a very far distance, a walk, a journey spiritually, to negate every movement of discord, Euch machlekes shem shemayim, also discord which is for the sake of heaven. Vafilu believe even from the heart. Shvi kishach b'leiv echad. Was gemusst poil sein of the Eden Agroisa is Gematetkeit. That must have impacted them to become very tired. Und der Rebbe that's why he didn't tell them anything. So the Rebbe learns that the tiredness, the Chulsa, the Urcha, is talking mainly about the spiritual transition, which is a transition into a level that they're all united, which takes a tremendous amount of an emotional toll with relative to where they were before. And therefore, that is the main tiredness, and that's why he didn't tell them anything. And the Rebbe explains yet deeper. Not only is the weakness of the road not a negative, because they're weak. Okay, we're saying they're weak physically. Now we're saying they're weak spiritually, so we couldn't tell them anything. But actually, their greatest level was that they were weak. Let's look inside. Dalet. A deeper explanation we can say. The weakness of the road is not just a idea of lacking. As mitzad der chalishos fun Eden, that because the Eden were weak, haben sie nicht gekannt vernehmen mit der Achones zu Kabbalas HaTorah. They could not take care with the preparation of Kabbalas HaTorah. It means they were too exhausted, too tired from the spiritual journey, the physical journey, and they could not prepare themselves for Kabbalas HaTorah. But there is a nor binyone ze adrabe. Nor binyonenu ze. But in our case, what we're dealing with here is adrabe. It's on the contrary. Chulshel du urcha do. Here, the weakness of the road is a ma'ila v'aliyah b'matzovam shel Yisrael. This is an advantage and an elevation in the condition of the Yid. And possibly the Rebbe says, as he is hecher, that is even higher. Also from the later on areas, aspects of the preparation that follow. This first weakness is actually the greatest preparation, even more than the other one. And the Rebbe wants to introduce the fact that we have everybody equal. That's like a very outstanding statement over here to say that Moshe Rabbeinu and the simplest of Jews were belev echad. We can't imagine the distance of the comparison between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Pashut Shebepshutim Shebe Yisrael and the very simplest of the Yid. So it's tremendous. How could we even compare? But yet, und da sagt man bei Yichan Sham Yisrael, that the Yisrael camped there, as alle Yidden from Moshe Rabbeinu bis Pashut Shebepshutim, starting all Yidden, all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu to the very simplest of the simple. They united with a total unity, believe echad, all one heart. Moshe Rabbeinu with the simplest, all had one heart. It's obvious this wasn't just a rote things that were just done, just taught. But one heart means that everybody, that even the simplest of Jew, had that heart of Moshe Rabbeinu. But mit an Achdus Hamit is a true unity, so that Yid with Moshe were really one. How does that happen? It's the Fun movement. As by Yidin is Faran and a Kudush believe that by the Yidin there exists a point in the heart, in welches gleichen Zechuis, in which it equals out, ki ish echad believe echad, like one man, one heart. In that level of the soul, it equals out the Godel Shebegedoi limit and Pashut Shebeshutim. The greatest amongst the greatest, with the simplest amongst the simplest, they all equal out when it comes to that level. Und in dem ist bestanden der Öftu von Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged har. This was the accomplishment, the novelty that Yichan Yisrael neged har. Ständig nege the Hor, as they were standing opposite the mountain. If zu sein Kibbel Torah Sinai, so to receive the Torah from Sinai. Is Bazein is Gal geworden in the Kodesh Belev. So it was revealed to them that point of the heart was gleich zu eus alle wie einer. That point of the heart that equals them all out as one. Everybody, all Yidden, in them, bastei der Iker Achonet zu Kabbalah Satorah. That is the main preparation to come to that level, to Vayichan Yisrael. That is the main preparation for receiving the Torah. How so? Hey. And that's why that is the main and the maybe even in a higher preparation than the other days. That's both of them. What's the explanation in this? We had already discussed what is the novelty, what was accomplished by Matan Torah. The Torah was known to them all the time. There was yeshivas, there was learning. What happened by Matan Torah that there's such a big deal? The answer to that is that the Eibishter gave us the Torah with his power. The Yidden before Matan Torah, they learned it with their intellect the way they can. All of a sudden, the Eibishter gives them the Torah, his Torah, with the power of the Eibishter. And this was the Eibishter gave over the Torah for the rest, for always. So, to be able to get that, they needed to be ki ish echad, b'leiv echad, to reveal that level of the soul in which they're all one. Let's look inside. The l'chayra. So, what's the novelty of Matan Torah? Limud Torah is doch gewen euch in the friedike Torah far Matan Torah. The story of Torah existed also in the previous generation before Matan Torah. Uladugma, as for example, Shivas Shem Be'ever, the yeshiva that Shem Be'ever led, the Ovis, or then you have that Ever Shem Be'ever, then you have the Ovis, the forefather. Shalom du kol Torah kulat linit. Now they studied all of the Torah before it was given. Valderech ze b'neim achareyhem, also their children that followed the forefathers, lifnei Matan Torah. They also learned Torah bees to the extent, as we say, as leposka yeshiva maviseinu, quoting the saying of our sages, the Gemara, the Shandra brings down the note here, but that they never ceased. There was always yeshiva from our forefathers in Mitzrayim. While they were in Egypt, they were still learning Torah all the time. Gemara in Yoma. So what's the novelty giving us Torah? We know Torah was there all the time. So it's explained as the Eiftu Bashtet in them. But what is the novelty? It consists in the fact was Damut is given Matan Torah. They actually gave us the Torah. No son Lona Esteros. He gave us his Torah. He is gegeben geworden from the Neusen Torah. It was given from the one who gives the Torah. Hashem gave us the Torah. Before the Torah wasn't given to us, everybody took it according to their sechel. Lifnei Matan Torah, genommen Torah. Before Matan Torah, how you took Torah, you took it with unloit, and according to Megnam Koyach Hasechel Vabitel, according to your own powers, your intellect, and your subjugation. B'shas Matan Torah, but on the time Matan Torah, that Eibishter gegeben Torah. Hashem gave Torah according to the way and the power of His giving. By Matan Torah is given, Matan Torah was Vaydaber Elikim as Kol Advorim Ha'ila Leimer. Elikim spoke all these words. Leimer means then Vaydaber Elikim, that we should continue with that. This is the words of Elikim. Leimer then Vaydaber Elikim, that we continue to say what the Eibishter is saying. And similar later on, Moshe Rabbeinu Bahar gelernt kol ha-Torah kulam epi hagvura v'nitna chulu. He learned all of the Torah when he went up to the mountain. He learned it all from Hashem, and then he gave it. So it's the Eibishter's Torah that is given then and on the mountain. Und das ist given nicht an einem Moleke Sache. It didn't happen once at Matan Torah. Nor beim Geben the Torah oder der Eibishter Kaviochel, when Hashem gave the Torah, the Eibishter, so to speak, sich reingegeben in der Torah. He put himself into the Torah. Kipirush HaYidu b'Maimer Chazal as the known interpretation in the saying of our sages that Anoichi is a Rosh Tevis, Anon Nafshik Sofis Yehovis. The Eibishter says he put himself, his nefesh, written and gave over into the Torah. Azoi, to such an extent as B'Shah Said Len Torah Be'ez U'B'Chol Zman Shiyeh. And wherever and all times, at any time, in any time, Dafer Zain Bagdomas Hamira Babroch, he must introduce first the saying, the blessing. Nosan Lonu Es Torah. He gave us his Torah. His Torah, the Eibishter gave us his Torah, because Oisiatem Loichem, you take me. It's his Torah, and Hashem placed himself, and you take the Torah. That has been given by Matan Torah, that power. Und das is the Chidush, and this is the novelty from the Aton Nigleisa from Matan Torah. The Eibishter revealed himself by Har Sinai. We say it in the davening, Aton Nigleisa, you have been revealed Matan Torah. Es is nicht nur zugekumenai sofevalia legabe lifnei Matan Torah. Not only did it add an addition and an elevation relative to what took place before Matan Torah, but what was accomplished, it was a novelty, which is not comparable at all. Lifnei Matan Torah, before Matan Torah, when limud that Torah is given mitzadem eigenem koyach, when the study of Torah came from the power, your own power, koyach haseichel, the power of the intellect, v'chulu, is move on. So it's understood as madgenume from Torah, what you were able to take from Torah, nor as they feel, only to the extent Viful der Leimed is bekeich zum Asik sein. The one who learns is able to understand. It was measured according to you because you're taking it with your seichel von Chochmah as much as you can take from God's wisdom. But it's up to you. Hashem didn't give you his wisdom. You are taking from the wisdom whatever you can. But as opposed to after Matan Torah, is the limud ha-Torah ba'ofen. The learning of Torah is in such a way as men verbindt sich durch them, that when you learn Torah, you tie yourself with them with the giver of the Torah. The Eibishter puts himself in the Torah, and you connect to the giver of the Torah. He put himself in his Torah. So now you're not just taking what you understand. You're taking the Eibishter because the Eibishter gives you the Torah the way he puts himself into the Torah. So that is now connected to the level of the real bittel in order to take that full. Und das ist verbunden mit Vayichan Sham Yisrael ki ish echad b'lev echad. That is associated and tied to the Yidden camp there, like one man with one heart. The chilukim by limud ha-Torah zwischen ein id mit ha-zweiten id. The differences that there are when you study Torah between one yid and another one, bis zum chiluk achi gadol, to the greatest of differences. Zwischen Moshe Rabbeinu Apostel Shebshuv Shutim, Moshe Rabbeinu, the very simplest among simple, seine benegeya sogas ha-Torah. They are as it pertains to grasping Torah. Was ein id hat mitzat koichas nafshei aggressere und hechere avone v'asoga in Torah, that one yid, because of the power of his soul, has a greater and higher understanding and grasping Torah. Another yet, till there is an uncomparable difference. So that's, if you talk about who can grasp Torah, who grasps more or less, that has to do with understanding. People are smarter, greater. So Moshe Rabbeinu is on the highest of the level, and the Pashas of Shutna on the lowest of the level. But that's as far understanding goes. But the fact that a Yid ties himself through the study of Torah, and his kulachad mit nois Torah becomes one with the giver of the Torah, It does by them, Godel shebegedolim and Kotten shebeketonim. That is by everybody. The fact that you connect to Torah and that when you study Torah, you become one with Hashem, the giver of the Torah. Doesn't matter how much you understand or not. This is by the greatest and the smallest. Them oisiatem loichem. You take Hashem. Is by a ish poshul was learned mikra, by a simple yid that is learning chumash. I feel him enough statement, even if he doesn't understand what he's studying. Muzer magdim zainas v'nosam lono es. He still has to make the bracha. You have given us your Torah, so the Eibishter put himself in the Torah. Is dos der selber oisi? That's the same oisi was by the Lamden Godel, which the great scholar was hot agor tifa avona v'asogin Torah, who has a very deep understanding and grasp of Torah. And he's in the mechadish chidush hamiritim, comes up with great novelties. They're still at the same level. You're taking the same Hashem with that perspective, the oisi, because the ilu von oisi atem loichim. The advantage, you take me, werd nicht der gerecht durch eigene kreges. That you don't reach through your own powers. The Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't get the oisi mitzad. It's the Eibshtik is that. Nor kum b'mayla. Val noson lono es teirose. That he gave us his Torah. And therefore, all you can get it comes from the Eibshter, just like Moshe gets it, and the Pashutun gets it. Und der Inyan, this idea that you take the Eibishter is verbunden mit dem Leib von Yidden, is tied to the heart of Yid. Weil in Pneumius Nakudas a Leib von a Yid. Because in the inner and the point of the heart of a Yid is Meir Yechid Shebenefesh. Over there shines the Yechid of the soul. Hecher legamri von sein Hasoga betam badas, which is entirely higher than his grasp and his reason and his knowledge. That's in his heart. That's the yichid of the soul. But in that understanding, it's an extension of the soul, but not the soul, not the inner of the soul. The inner of the soul, that is, over there it shines, the yichid shebenefesh, the levels, the highest level of the nefesh, the yichid, the hecher legamri from zayin hasoga betam badas, which is much greater, much higher than his grasp, which is based on grasp and reason and understanding. Was in der Nekuda is by jeden Id sein Emunah in Oberst und L'mayla mitam badas. In that point, every Yid has the belief in Hashem, in the one above, which is higher than reason and rational. Und das meint Vayichan Shom Yisrael ki ish echad b'leiv echad. This means that the Yidden rested there like one man with one heart. Kumendik neged ha'or. When they came opposite the mountain, was hot gedarf zayin ma'amed har Sinai, where there needed to take place the standing of Mount Sinai, Matan Torah, the given Torah. Or those by Eden are raised from the Galus, that brought out by Eden the revelation from their primus and Nukudas left from the inner and the point of their heart. Was is by Ali Eden Beshava, which is equal by all Eden. Und der Gilui Hanukuda Shabalev, and this revelation of the point of the heart of the Gemacht Farakeli to the Getachkeit zum Torah, that made them into a vessel for the godliness of Torah, in order to be able to connect, to take the Torah, the Oisi Atam Loichim, that level of the heart that was revealed, that level of the Leib, that level of Yechida, that bittul allowed them to receive the Oisi Atam Loichim. So by Daber Elikim Bizes Vert Leimer, that Elikim becomes Leimer, say to him to bring it down in their Primis Halem. So, as the Rebbe explains over here, that there's a whole other idea with Matan Torah, which wasn't before. Before, everything was with the own koiches, with your own koiches. The difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and the other is in the koiches, I believe, is in the seichel. But when you talk about the Etzem Halev, this Galus Halev, in which there is the point of Amunah, the point of accepting, that is equal by everyone. And um, that the Kudas Halev prepares them for that special revelation of Matan Torah when they come by Har Sinai, to make them prepared for the godliness that they were able to receive by Dabar Elikim, Lamer Bar Hashem Elikim is bring it down to them in their level. They had that level of bittul. That's Kisha Echad. But it didn't stop there. They had to go to the next days because besides the level of bittul, we needed also to penetrate, not just so that they negate of their existence and they get it, their munah, they needed to also penetrate into their intellect. That's why we needed the other days of preparation, Zayin. Aber der Achone von Vayichon Sham Yisrael B'lei Vechod is nor the erste Darge der Achone zu Matan Torah. That's only the first step in preparing for Matan Torah. Durch der Meile Nifloa von Bittel V'Achdus, through this wondrous advantage of subjugation and unity, wird man akela zu Torah, you become a vessel for Torah. Aber the Tachlis from Torah, but ultimately, what is the ultimate goal of Torah is not to be bottled, but to understand Torah. Is as man soll sie lernen. You should study mit Avona Vasoga, but understanding and grasp. That's why fitting the second part to bring down the Torah also when learning and understanding gefordert der ganzen Seder von Achonis zu Matan Torah. That's what was necessary, the entire order preparing for Matan Torah. The Kavona for Matan Torah is the intent of Matan Torah is as der Odom soll sich vereinigen mit Torah, that the person should be united with Torah, not to be only subjugated to Torah, lose his mitzias, but we want the Yid, the mitzias, that he should be connected with Torah, that he should be united with Torah. Bis as das soll werden sein chayes mitzias, that should become his energy, and his existence is the Torah. The river muss Torah genommen werden euch durch Limud. That's why we must also take Torah by studying it. Hasoga v'vonas haseichel, grasping and understanding of the seichel. B'shas men versteht an inyan b'seichel. When you understand something logically, wird der muskel nitfes in dem seichel. Then what you understood becomes captured in that intellect, ha'odom, in the human intellect. Bizes verta till von sein Metzias, that it becomes part of his existence. Similar to the food of bread that turns into blood and becomes part of his flesh. Like similarly is when you internalize and you understand the Torah becomes internal, becomes part of you. Tanya, to use the language of the Tanya, as Verta Yichud Nifla, it becomes a wonderful union between Hashvishin und von der Maske mit dem Muskel, in between the one who understands with the idea that Torah becomes one, that's through the Sefer. Kumtois. So what it turns out, Torah, when you grasp Torah, nemta ida rein, so the Yid takes in, and he becomes one, and fused with the words of Hashem. By learning the words of Torah, he becomes together one, which is higher than the world together. So you need the person to get it. So you have the Achana Klolis that takes place on Rosh Chodesh, which is the Batlus, the Etzem HaNefesh, which you don't take through Seichel, and then it has to come down to Seichel. This was the two groups, two categories of preparation for Yidden for receiving the Torah. The Erste Achana zu Matan Torah is Kinal. The first preparation of Matan Torah said before, by Yichon Sham Yisrael, Ki Ish Echad Be'alev Echad. They all camped there like one person, one heart. Tachlis Habitul, total subjugation. Was poiled, that impacts as that impacts that we should all be like one person with one heart is the level of bittul. The klol is the achona from Klal Yisrael Kechon. That's the general preparation, all Yidden together. Aber from Sheni b'Sivan, but once we started with the second day of Sivan, is Hischil Moshe his asik imon b'inyan Kabbalah Satoira. And Moshe started to occupy with them to prepare them receiving the Torah. Was der Mitwert gemeint? What is meant with this? The Yone Hachone, those matters of preparation, Belchatun Oif, that they accomplish as the Metzias Adam, that the person's essence, not just his Yechida, not just the Yechida that is the inner of the heart, but also the whole entity of the person, the Seichel. So Zain Masim Veroi should be fitting and it should be worthy, the Klei Kibbul, and it should be a receptacle, a vehicle that can receive to Kabbalah Satayim, to receive the Torah. That's why he told them, V'atem Tiuli Mamlechas Kohanim, on the second day, Mitzvah Agbola, third day of Krisha, B'chulu, was Yom Eden heilig gemacht, B'chulu, they made Eden holy. Und in die Achone seine Veranchelukim zwischen Eden. Over there is distinction. Yadra Loid Zay Madregen Avedus Hashem, each one according to their level in the service of Hashem. Bis me gefind to find us by Kabbalah Satera Atzma, when the Torah was given, when they received the Torah, Zane given Chilukim by Eden. There were differences by Eden. Moshe Mechitza La'atzma V'chulu. Moshe had a partition, he was by himself. Aber by Alaman is given Parcha Nishmasum. So while it was Mechitza by himself, but by all Yidden, the soul flew away, which means when I'll call Diba V'Diba, there was the level of the Chana Klolis, level of the Bittel that took place. Und das Rebbe sagt the Gemara le Amarlu le Midim b'Shum Chulsha de Urcha. He didn't tell them anything because of the weakness of the road. The Urcha Halicha Rochnis. This road, the spiritual journey, as Ali Eden from Moshe Rabbeinu Bizdam Posher Shepshutim Shel Yisrael, that all Yidden, from Moshe Rabbeinu at the highest level to the very simple among the simples of Yidden. So on this Achet werden, they should be united. Is verbunden mit Chulsha l'Malyusa. That's tied of the Chulsha of the weakness taken as an advantage. Achalishus ubitl in Eden. That was the weakness, the bitl, subjugation of this road, of this union. That's why he didn't say anything. Die Hachone is nicht verbunden mit Amira. That preparation isn't tied to saying. No, this is an inyan from Loy Omar. This is not saying shtikel bittel, silence and subjugation. That's why he didn't say it. The chulsha, the bittel of the road, of this standing, of the gilui of the nefesh, of the essence of nefesh, is there's no talk over there. The greich den bittel. After they reach this subjugation, the bittul that brought about that all Yidden are like one man, like one heart, then it required, as Yidden sollen sich herabtragen, that the Yidden should sort of descend, move away from the bittul otzum, from this powerful effacement of negation, of non-entity, and to occupy yourself with the other matters of preparation. Well, dafke durch them, because if you stay in bittul, you're not fulfilling the kavanah. Only if you bring down that bittul into your metzias, dafke durch them, the preparations that start taking place on the second day, firzach durch der tachlis from Torah. That is the ultimate goal of Torah, as quoted from the Tanya, der Yichud Nifla, that wondrous union, zusammen mit Oisi, together with the Oisi, which is Oisi Atem Loichem, that you take me, that takes place with the level of the Bittel, also into the Metzias of the person, to bring about the Yichud Nifla. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Bamidbar Tov Shin Mem Gimel.